Hi, I'm Tanner Sarver.
And I'm Julia Martin, and we worked with Ryan Letts and Chandan Preet Singh to discuss Lego, an outsourcing journey.
So first we'll go over history of Lego and how we know it today. So Lego was first established in Denmark by Olker Christensen, and it's a family-owned business, and the first product they launched was the Lego duck. And through that, to 1946, we have the famous Lego brick, which maintained their core value, and they continue to develop this throughout the 40s and throughout the 50s, as they began through the late 40s and 50s to go through international exporting, where they would launch their products worldwide. And with that, we saw the Legoland launched and product diversification, as well as that through the 1990s. And in 1996, they found themselves at odds, trying to develop new products, trying to develop new lines, responding to the market demand as the demand for their toys were shifting. So in 2000, this led to, in 2003, 2004, they had many product lines, they had a lot of suppliers, they lacked a lot of communication throughout their distribution centers, and they declared severe operating losses in both 2003 and 2004. So Lego responded by hiring a new CEO. So they brought new leadership in and turned their profits around a little bit, and led them to 2006, where they partnered with Flextronics for an outsourcing agreement, which 80% of their production would be outsourced to Flextronics. Now this was well-intentioned in that Lego was turning profits, they were cutting costs, but a lack of communication throughout the agreement with Flextronics ultimately led to its termination. Now, after that, their new leadership developed their own outsourcing production strategy without giving up licensing of their products to another corporation, where they took things they learned from the agreement and turned it into a benefit for themselves. And this led throughout the late 2000s and through 2015 and 2014, we saw the launch of the Lego Movie, which they were part creators in, which really helped them turn some nice profits. And you can see in 2015 where their profits have grown every year since the 2005. So now that we've gone through Lego's history, we would now like to touch upon the culture and the values that have also shaped them. So Lego's vision is to inspire children to explore and challenge their own creative potential. This emphasizes their core values of imagination, creativity, fun, quality, caring, and learning. So what Lego aims to do with their products, with their Lego brick, and everything that's spun off of the Lego brick, is to get children to develop problem-solving skills, be creative, and it's a toy, so you're going to have fun while you're doing it. So Lego recognizes that power of curiosity that came with its children, and they develop products where the children could expand on that curiosity. So towards the end of the 20th century, Legos had to begin to focus more on its strategy to shift to the ever-changing demand of the market and respond to its competitors. So in the mid-1990s, Lego began to focus on product differentiation, and they highly depended on their new product development and dumping costs into research and development. This, in hindsight, it seems like a good idea, but they really lost sight on their core value of the Lego brick and their brand image associated with that. They attempted to develop too many product lines, and it ended up cannibalizing some of the products we knew as the Lego brick. So in the mid-2000s, after they suffered some operating losses, they realized they had to cut cost of goods sold. So they outsourced their production in a partnership with Flextronics. So 80% of their products were being licensed to Flextronics and outsourced that way. So they intended to expand its global reach of production centers, and this ultimately spread production too thin. During the late 2000s, they realized their current strategy with outsourcing was ineffective. Flextronics, the agreement was well intentioned, as I said before, but a lack of communication let Lego learn that they need to move forward with an outsourcing strategy of its own. So they decided to phase this one out, simplify its product line, and begin to standardize production, which takes away the cost of mass product differentiation and will reduce cost of goods sold by standardizing its product. So the first thing that comes to mind when you think of Lego is the Lego brick and the endless possibilities that you can build with a Lego brick. This has certainly been seen as a success around the world. It's been named Toy of the Century twice. So remaining central to the Lego brick idea always was a focus of Lego. This also emphasized their basic philosophy of learning and development through problem-solving skills, creativity, imagination, anything that you can build with this Lego brick. And now from a production standpoint, their product packaging and molding was really a key component to the efficiency of its distribution and really made it stand out from its competitors. So when they began to engage in their outsourcing, they wanted to remain central, that they weren't going to give up this know-how of their distribution, of their packaging and their product. And this really identified Lego's unique process and their brand name, which helped them remain a competitive advantage today. So when Lego found itself at odds trying to develop a product scheme that could meet demand in the mid-1990s, this led to their main challenge as a corporation going forward. So their 80-20 outsourcing and internal production plan, this emphasized that they still wanted to keep their packaging, but they were going to outsource all their production and license it to Flextronics, which gave up some of the communication across the distribution centers with Lego, and ultimately led to the company becoming spread too thin. So the Flextronics partnership was a fast-paced transition. There was a loss of operational control. There was no standardized operating process throughout its production. Lego always responded to seasonal demand and what was in at the time, whereas Flextronics always had a static sort of constant rate of production, which ultimately hurt Lego. This led to extreme global expansion. It did cut their costs in that they were able to turn small profits after the 03 and 04 operating losses, but their increased complexity in product lines led to developing video games, television, and clothing. If this would have responded to seasonal demand, it could have been more effective than it was, but it also led to miscommunication with its suppliers, in that it had 11,000 suppliers, which makes it near impossible to communicate an effective strategy and negotiate a central contract with detailed stipulations.
If we look at a Porter's 5 forces analysis for Lego, starting with rivals, we see high threat from rivals including Hasbro and Mattel, who are two of the world's other leading toy manufacturing companies. Additionally, these opponents are constantly contending to win over consumers through promotions, branding, and different product offerings. The market is heavily saturated, not only with these 3 main competitors, but also other toy companies throughout the world. As far as suppliers go, suppliers have moderate bargaining power. In Lego's case, Lego has over 11,000 suppliers, and this has restricted LEGO's operational efficiency due to redundant costs and procedures in production, as well as poor communication. However, because there are so many suppliers out there for toy companies, suppliers do not have that high of bargaining power. In terms of buyers have high bargaining power because there is such competition for shelf space in toy companies, in toy retailers. These retailers include large and small scale retailers, including big box stores and mom and pop toy stores. And brand loyalty has greatly diminished since toy companies started as a growing industry, because new technologically enhanced toys have been taking over the field. When we look at suppliers are a very high threat to the toy industry because demand is decreasing as consumers look towards electronic toys and technologically based toys, including video games, computer consoles, Game Boy, PlayStation, Nintendo, all kinds of electronic products and video games. And consumers are less price sensitive as they used to be as they look towards the technologically advanced toys. If you look at toys such as hoverboards, these are very expensive toys. However, consumers do not seem to mind, even though these products are potentially dangerous to consumers. As far as entrants to the industry go, these are a low threat because the market is already heavily saturated. LEGO, Mattel, and Hasbro have cemented their positions in the industry, which requires new entrants to obtain substantial startup costs just to enter the market. So there's not high threat from new entrants. If we look at a pest analysis for LEGO, starting with politically, LEGO's international presence in over 130 countries and production facilities throughout Europe present LEGO with varying legal requirements unique to specific nations. This has become a major problem for LEGO with their organizational issues because they do not have enough documentation and contract knowledge when it comes to entering various countries, and they are lacking the specific organization and documentation for each specific country that they're in. Additionally, LEGO must ensure safeguards are upheld for their production and supply chain processes to continue in these countries. Economically, increasingly unfavorable exchange rates of key currencies are impacting LEGO's bottom line and sales forces. Most of LEGO's products are sold in the United States and in Europe. Both the United States dollar and the euro have changed in value greatly over the past 2 decades as the euro entered the market, replacing popular currencies such as the lira and the pound. Conversely, when these currency values decrease, they impact consumers' likeliness to purchase LEGO products. For social and technology, there's growing demand shifts towards technological products, such as video games, and this has shifted consumer focus as these innovative toys take over the market. Shifting our focus internally to an internal analysis of LEGO, we see that production in the early 2000s was inefficient, scattered, and very costly. LEGO was producing over 12,000 different components for their products and was having to pay for the inventory for these products, the production and creation of these products. So differentiation shifted and in attempts to reduce the cost of goods sold. LEGO faced big losses in 2003 and 2004 because of the product differentiation and the lack of communication and standardization throughout their production facilities. They were spread too thin. In 2004, LEGO introduced a new CEO who was the second CEO from outside of the founding family. He introduced an outsourcing agreement with Flextronics that began in 2006. While this agreement was initially good for the company, as the company saw rapid turnaround in their profit margins, the agreement ended up not being as profitable and as important for the company as they initially thought. There were profit increases, but there was a lack of communication with Flextronics, and LEGO ended up being spread even thinner. and even farther. They've seen extreme growth in their profits up until 2015, with annual profits multiplying 9 times since 2005. While the LEGO partnership with Flextronics lasted just over 2 years, LEGO learned effective supply chain management and operation strategies from the electronics manufacturing service that enabled LEGO to grow independently even after the agreement ended. Most importantly, LEGO learned the importance of documentation and organization. LEGO had presences in over 130 countries, but their documentation and organization when it came to international documentation and contracts was very disorganized, and the company was facing problems with contracts as they left their suppliers that they'd been with for decades. Additionally, when LEGO was expanding, they first entered high-cost countries such as Switzerland and the United States for their production. With the collaboration with Flextronics, LEGO was able to take advantage of positive externalities by entering the markets of Hungary and Mexico for their production. Another important lesson that LEGO learned from Flextronics was the importance of standardization in their operating processes and products. When LEGO reduced the amount of products they offered from 12,000 components to 5,500 components, they were able to save money in manufacturing and production costs because they were turning over their production lines less often, they were storing fewer parts for inventory, and they were able to meet demand numbers having fewer products. Additionally, they were able to standardize their products across their production facilities, and this was a lesson they learned from Flextronics because Flextronics was very standardized across the world. Ultimately, LEGO learned a lot from their 2-year agreement with Flextronics, even though the agreement did not last. Our recommendation for LEGO is that instead of using a company such as Flextronics, LEGO would benefit from a collaboration with an export management companies. While these companies are expensive to collaborate with, they bring extensive knowledge and experience in the global production industry. These would decrease startup costs and time for entering new countries and new markets. The key use of one of these EMCs lies in the contract terms. So LEGO would maintain operational control if that's what they chose, which is something that they lost in their partnership with Flextronics, and one of the reasons that the agreement with Flextronics ultimately ended. Additionally, LEGO should have transferred production to Hungary and Mexico sooner because production costs are much lower in these countries. 90% of LEGO's market is located in Europe and North America. And while LEGO has a high value to weight ratio, it still benefits from production in these countries because they offer low wage expenses while being located next to the key markets. LEGO's key expenses are production and cost of goods sold, but by decreasing production costs being located in countries where wages are less expensive, LEGO would save a lot of money. If we look at the pro forma metrics, we realize that the cost of goods sold and production were the #1 problem impacting LEGO's profitability. LEGO can decrease production expenses by centralizing production with a standardized production line. They benefit from location advantages such as decreasing wage expenses in countries such as Mexico and Hungary, and they can take advantage of production's high value to weight ratio, meaning it's cheap to ship in terms of how much the product costs to produce. LEGO can track their return on investment by following the differences in net profits to determine the investment's overall success. In summary, the LEGO Group has seen considerable profit growth since 2004 with the addition of a new CEO, collaboration with Flextronics from 2006 to 2008, and standardized production and fewer product offerings, which was a lesson that they learned from their collaboration with Flextronics. In the future, LEGO could benefit from an EMC company which would support their already successful production.